Hey friends, JB is here, Cyber Crisis Country. Here we go. We're already kicking off, and this is a big story. The deal is that China is hacking U.S. companies. Essentially, they have infiltrated the chipset of some major servers. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Now, don't forget that in order to really make this hack happen, we got to think about a couple things. We want to think about this idea of cyber. Okay, cyber is what? It's the point where we are dependent upon the technology, and we really could not sustain our way of life, much less survive, without the technology that we have. So we haven't yet really talked about viruses and hacks. Okay, so we're going to make some assumptions here for those of us who are in the world. We probably know what that is, and on a different day, we'll circle back and cover what are viruses and what are hacks. But essentially, it's a way of manipulating the technology, and technology takes the shape of the data and on the device. Okay, so you have a application, right? You have an application that runs on a device. That could be your mobile phone, that could be your wearable like your Fitbit, or it could be your computer. And you have data, you have the application, and then you have the device. Now, a hack means how do we manipulate that application? How do we manipulate that application to penetrate that data, to exfiltrate the data, to take the data and steal it? It's kind of like a bank, and your data is the money, right? Your data is the money, and people are trying to figure out how to break into the bank to grab your money. Okay. And so that is a little bit what's going on. A hack is someone who's trying to steal, or it could be that if it's the bank that we're talking about, it could be that what they're trying to do is listen in to find out what kind of insider information are going on with bank investments, such that they can take that information, use it to their advantage, such as in negotiations, such as in stock trades. Inside information is huge. So that's a different analogy. So there's different ways that people can manipulate technology to grab the data. And the technology, remember, is the app that's running on a device. Now, so traditionally, people have manipulated the application, okay, because the application is dynamic, it changes. You can put code in place, typically, all right, and you have the code is dynamic, meaning that you can write new code and you can apply that code to the device and get new features and functions out of that device. What a lot of people forget or neglect is that code itself is actually embedded into devices. Okay. So they take programs and they use the logic in the programs and they wire circuits together to take that program and put it on a chip so that way it's fixed and it's a the device has the chip the circuits on the chip are positioned in such a way that they're already an application in of themselves, and there's microcode already baked inside of these chipsets. Some of them are a little bit different. They work as switches and relays. Okay, but in essence, they're taking programs and code and putting it on these chips. Now, that's been the case for a long time. I think we might have already touched on how some of the VCRs even already had programs embedded on the chips. All right, we've had CD players, we've had TVs now, smart TVs. All of that logic that would have been probably on an sort of written down in programming code are put or embedded into chips themselves. Now, what China has figured out that if we're the people who are making these chips, are making these server chips, okay, if China is the one who's doing 90% of the manufacturing of chips or 75% of the manufacturing of chips, because US companies have said, oh, they can do it at a fraction of the cost over there in China, neglecting the fact that they're stealing your trade secrets and everything else. But China says, hey, look, if we're doing 75% of the chips over there in China, what we can do is we can put our own chips within the design itself, and then we will do it covertly. So what they're basically doing is that they're putting if we talk about the bank again, it's like they have their own uh, person working in the bank, which is a permanent position, and that person is sending information back to China. Okay. They've taken a special chip. Let's take a look at this special little chip that they have here. Okay. I don't know if this blue chip is exactly it, but they've got a picture of it. It looks like no bigger than the very, very tip of a pencil. It's on the very tip of this person's finger, and you can see fingerprints. The resolution is so tight that you can see fingerprints right here. And in fact, my cursor here, my pointer, is literally almost covering half of it because it's that small. Okay, this is a very small chip. What they found is that China is actually taking this chip, putting it on these special circuit boards, these servers, and they're covertly doing it in such a way that a lot of people didn't even realize it was there. And what they're doing is they're making this look like just a random looking circuit, so that if you were looking at the circuit board, you probably wouldn't even notice that this was there. You might have mistaken this for some sort of different special electronic piece on the circuit board, some special circuit that it doesn't really even look like much. Okay, so what's happened is why is this chip put in there? Why is this chip put on these motherboards? The reason why is that they've used this chip, the logic that's been basically baked into this chip. Okay, the logic, okay, is a virus itself. This chip is a cyber virus. It's a chip virus is what this is. This allows them um, to get in between the memory and the processor and redirect or change the the instructions to the processor or the network path, or do a call out to some other foreign entity like another server, which would give new instructions to this chip. And what would happen is they would basically be able to control the computer, and they'll do it as a way of mining data, mining trade secrets, federal crimes. Now, let's look at this. How the hack worked. Chinese military unit is embedded in um, a particular motherboard, circuit board, server board. Okay, microchips were inserted by Chinese factories that supplied super micro corporation, or micro says super micro computer incorporated is what it is, and they call it super micro, sort of as a quick handle. And it's the world's largest seller of motherboards. Well, the motherboards compromised were built into the servers assembled by Supermicro, and the sabotage servers made their way into all kinds of data centers. When a server is installed and switched on, the microchip altered the operating system core so it could accept modifications. The chip could also contact computers controlled by the attackers in the search for further instructions and code. So it's a virus chip is what it is. All right. So that's essentially in a nutshell what you have here. Now it'll get into all of the deals of how they do it. See what happens is when you design motherboards, when you design circuits, when you design chips, it starts with a chip design, okay? And what happens is a customer might not even make the chips. Well, a lot of times they do is they take the designs. They have like chip architects in a particular company. And what they do is they use patterns and principles of nano microchip processing, manufacturing, and design. And what they do is they create these conceptual chips and they make sure that they proof them virtually, okay, meaning that they test them in a virtual lab. So they don't actually make them, but they sort of test what if scenarios virtually. And when they're ready, they take that design and they bring it to a company who manufactures these chips. In this case, it's Supermicro. Okay, Supermicro Computer Incorporated. And what Supermicro does is Supermicro builds the chip. They don't necessarily even look at all the circuits. They might. They may look at some and they may help in design possibly. But if there's a customer who has their own design ready to go, all they say is, "Look, I just don't need you guys to do anything but build this chip to these specifications." Guess what? They build a chip to those specifications. So what Supermicro did is they use some companies in China, and sometimes when those companies get basically overwhelmed, they'll subcontract to other companies. And that was the case here. In between them, they took the design and they modified the design to include this new super spy chip. Okay, this super virus spy chip was put into the design. According to what they found through intelligence, the CIA's uh, interception of communications, they found that there was a person who was acting as a proxy for, I believe it was Supermicro, and they were saying that they were forcing the subcontracting company in China to modify the design. And once they modified the design, the original customer who was looking for these circuit boards, I think it was Supermicro or it was Element, I forget. Uh, and the company really just said, "Hey, look, this circuit board does what we want. It seems to look the way we want. It seems to smell the way we want, etc." They did not validate the circuit board and the mask of the circuit board and all the layers of the chips on the circuit board according to the original specification design. Okay, so they basically had original design, design A, and it was not validated against design A. It was validated against design B. Okay, if at all validated, and then the circuit boards started getting into the market. Now these circuit boards are in all of your major spy networks. You got your drone. You've got your NASA communication. You've got cyber defense who have used these. Amazon's used these. Apple got burned with these. A lot of companies got burned. And some of the companies, they found these chips maybe a couple years ago, and essentially they stopped doing business with these people because either they didn't know what the chip did or that it smelled really bad, that the fact that they got this chip that wasn't on their design. And so the fact of the matter is China's been up to no good. Of course, what China says is that they are also a victim and we should all work together to improve the cybersecurity posture of the world. Well, okay, so it's one of those things where, hey, look, China. I mean, we know what's going on. There's nothing and no one who could have figured out how to do this except a state-sponsored actor, meaning China. No one has the funds to the level needed to develop and do the design work to develop this, unless it was unless it was a Google or an Amazon or a Samsung. One of those guys could have probably funded this thing. Other than that, it had to have been a state actor, a state-sponsored uh, computer virus, chip virus, is what it ends up boiling down to. So, like I said, this is one of the things that if you're in the technology world, brothers and sisters in Christ, you're gonna say, "Hey, look, this is big news." In fact, if most of the at least a lot of the motherboards was made by Supermicro, you need to check. You may even have a server. If you're at church these days, or whoever you are, even if you're not in the ministry, you need to understand that you probably want to start putting your stuff on on a cloud platform that you trust. Because it is, you don't know what is being infiltrated these days when it comes to your data. In my opinion, you might as well offset your risk by putting it on the cloud and let someone else deal with that headache, because you might be burned with all these server boards that you've got to replace. I don't know. They say that this particular company, Element, which was one of the purchasers of Supermicro's motherboards, that they were one of the biggest one of the biggest purchasers of this technology was the Mormon Church for broadcasting their sermons globally, because the technology is so far in advance that they could compress the video and optimize the video and decompress it and just make it happen, because you know how heavy video is these days. Well, the 2015, they were one of the bigger ones. The other one was actually a porn industry, so it's kind of odd that you had a religious organization on the one hand, and then you had a porn industry trying to use the same technology on the other hand. Well, anyhow, my friends, this is a lot of complicated stuff. Okay, so the average person, the average ministry, the average company, Christian brothers and sisters, whatever it is, but the average thing, people are not going to really, this is not going to really hit them. But what it does give you a big look at is that China and the US are sort of at a cyber war right now, okay? And China has struck again. So we've figured it out, and now you can be sure that the DoD and US is not using these particular motherboards, server motherboards. But on the other hand, it's something to take note. It's very important stuff these days. So, wanted to bring it to your attention so you're not left in the dark. I'm trying to bring you. This is the cyber age, and I'm trying to bring you up to date information. And this is essentially like the shot that started the Civil War. Essentially, this is one of those big things that, yeah, because it's sort of done in the background, it's done in the cyber world. It's sort of this cyber cold world war that we are in, and it's going to stay that way probably for quite a long time. The actors out there are just different these days. A lot of you guys don't realize this is going on, but this is important stuff. So keep your eyes focused, because all of this is, we're going to wrap all this up together here, and it's going to start to kind of make a little bit more sense as episodes move forward and as you come up to speed on technology, because you are in the cyber age, you know that. So you're going to need to start learning about this, because in order for you to function as a ministry, in order for you to function in this world, you're going to have to stay up to speed, at least at the status quo level. You can't get too far behind, because otherwise, um, well, look, I'm not saying the Holy Spirit's not there. Hey, look, that's true, but He's using us and our new knowledge uh, to advance our level of ministry into new levels, into new dimensions. Okay, and so it's up to us to do our due diligence whenever that is, and staying up to speed on cyber and cyber information with a person who's insider in this kind of world is going to be hugely important for you moving forward. So, anyways, I probably didn't go, probably went longer than I should, but I just appreciate all of y'all. And if you like this, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, and appreciate your support. Take good care. Bye bye.